All right, what's good? Can we do a quick audio check? Let me know if everything is fine in the chat. What's up, guys? What is Gucci? We've got Tiger, Morris, Reagan. Good to see you, man. Good to see you. What's up, Daytona? Hope you're well, man. First time here. Damn. Welcome. Welcome to the pack. You came to the right place. You came to the right place. All right. Let's get rid of this real quick. Let's get rid of that. Delete. 4-hour chart. That's nice. Nice and clean. We've got the VWAP going on. We've got the review here. Today is the 26th. Let me just get everything in line here. We don't have CPI today. That was last week. So let's give it a minute. And then we kick this off. So it's actually gonna be starting from next week. I'll be streaming a bit later than usual because we've got daylight savings time now kicking in here in the Netherlands. So it's actually 7 p.m. my time. This is a horrible time for me to stream because usually we're taking the kids to bed at 7 p.m. So they're right now in the room next to me trying to be extremely quiet. But if you hear anything, that's the kids. So starting from next week, it's gonna be an hour later than usual. Yeah, there's definitely a CME gap for sure because we've been trading higher, right? So that means that there is a CME gap. Let me see if I've got on the chart. BTC, right? There's a gap up until 111-ish right here. So adds a layer of confluence. Now there's I wouldn't put too much emphasis on these gaps because a lot of times what people don't realize is that we also have something called a breakaway gap, and that is something where the market doesn't come back to rebalance that. Might do so eventually, but let's say that we have like a clean breaking structure and you need to look for longs there, right? But you're like, nah, there's a CME gap down here. I'm not going to be looking for longs. Like, I think that's not the correct mindset to have. So it's good if it's adding a layer of confluence right here, right? Where it was lining up with support. It fills in the gap. But other than that, I wouldn't put too much emphasis on that. Do you think we'll break 114? I mean, we're going to be covering that. So if everybody is ready to go, I will kick this off. So first things first, let's see. We've got a nice group of people with us today. BTC, right there. H4, we've got that. Then we've got the VWAPs here, and then we've got TPO, and then we've got this right here. All right, let's get to it. So first off, before we start this off, what is up, everybody? I hope y'all doing well. This stream is sponsored by Bybit. If you do want to support me in any way, or if you want to get access to the indicators, to the private Discord that I'm running, and learn all about VWAP and market profile, I would suggest to log in on our website. You can fill in your user ID from Bybit there if you made an account through my referral link, and you can get access by free by basically trading on the link. So there's that. I hope you enjoy the content, and if you have any questions throughout the stream, do let me know in the chat, because we'll be going over all of the questions later on. First things first, impact for news events. I forgot to add a tab here. Calendar Forks Factory. So, Monday, Tuesday, we don't have anything big here. I don't know. Does anybody know when we can expect Trump to come out with what was basically said during the meeting? Like, we did get some positive news already today, right, in terms of the tariffs. I think there is something coming next week. But in terms of the Forks Factory here, I think the FOMC statement here in the press conference on Wednesday is gonna be the news-driven event here. So that's what I want to be aware of. So let's write that down. We've got FOMC on Wednesday. Besides that, it's a relatively chill day, chill week, to be honest, with Monday and Tuesday, not so much. What's up, Glitch? Hope you're well, man. So back to the review. Recent developments. What have we been doing in terms of VWAP? First things first is we're going to be taking a look here at that yearly value. within the previous video that I've uploaded last week on YouTube, I said, honestly, considering this rejection here, things weren't looking too good, right? Because the market clearly told us that, okay, we're trying to break back above that standard deviation tree, which was previously like a really key point of areas of interest, right? And we just weren't able to accept back above. So in my opinion, during the recording there, I was like, you know what, this kind of feels like it's gonna be bearish here. So as long as we were trading below that previous standard deviation tree, we had to have like a slightly bearish thesis here for a potential run towards the lows and maybe even a bit lower, right? Then we've got CPI, we've got a lot of chop intraday and intra week, and now we're trading back above this price point there. So from a yearly perspective, I just cannot call this as a genuine break above developing year value. However, it is starting to look promising, where I'm of the mindset where if Bitcoin can maintain this as support, spend enough volume, right? Enough volume, time, and space above the developing year value high, above the previous standard deviation tree, we might be in for a treat, and we might finally get that push higher into Q4, where I think Bitcoin might even go towards 120K, maybe even much higher, right? But until then, this is gonna be a sticky point, but we need to accept above that developing year value. So yearly looking pretty good. Now on the quarterly, I would argue that it is also looking good, where yes, sellers are stepping in here at, we can't really justify this as quarterly developing VWAP just yet. There's just too little days within the quarter for me to be using this. But what I do think is gonna be really interesting here is that we weren't able to break below the previous quarterly value there. We then got that clean shift lower, taking out this low. Then we tried to break back within, sold off. Huge deviation here. Like, I think maybe we could just treat this as an anomaly, right? Because this is just weird as fuck that we saw this big of a push higher and then an immediate drawdown back on the following day. And now, right, we were struggling to get back within the previous quarterly value. Now that we're trading back within, I would argue, you know what? This is the range that we're now trading within. The previous quarterly VWAP and the previous quarterly value low. So from a higher time frame perspective, if we take a look towards the left side of the chart here, we have a up close candle before we had a structural break there, right? It was, there was mainly sell side being delivered here, right? As can be seen by this gap. So we do have a reason to rebalance this inefficiency there. This supply happens to line up exactly with the previous quarterly VWAP. And we also have the 9-day rolling VWAP and the 30-day within this region. I'm going to go over that in a bit, but so far, right, if there's going to be a bearish line in the sand, it's going to be the previous quarterly VWAP. If there's going to be a bullish line in the sand, it's going to be the previous quarterly very low. But do I think that we should be doing this for more upside? Honestly, no, because there's something in between here. And let's take a look at that. So the quarterly, right, to summarize it, we're accepting back within previous quarterly value, like the destination previous quarterly VWAP. It's looking pretty good. Now, let's get this right here, and let's go to our monthly. Right there, the monthly time frame. And this is why I said on the quarterly, we're bullish as long as we're holding previous quarterly value low as support. However, if we're taking a look at the monthly VWAP here, the monthly has actually been super crispy to trade, right? Within this previous range, we were right there. We weren't able to accept above previous month VWAP, retested value low again, right? Then get that clean breakaway from value. And then right here is where things got choppy. But now that we're trading above VWAP, I would argue that if there's gonna be a pullback and if Bitcoin is genuinely bullish, I don't think we should be revisiting these lows, to be honest. I think it should be relatively shallow here, right? Where we do something like that and then continuation higher. Now, bullish confirmation is when we're accepting above previous quarterly VWAP alongside the 90-day. But I think, if we're taking a look at some previous, breaks from value where I think we should be doing something like this, where we're just getting this awkward, like shallow retracement, right? Something like that, something like this. That's basically what I want to see here. So if we're getting something like that, right, and then continuation higher, that would be pretty strong in my opinion. I don't really want to see a break back below VWAP. So that brings me towards the weekly. So far, the yearly looks pretty good. The quarterly is accepting back within quarterly value. The monthly is accepting back within monthly value. No surprise that this is currently cap on upside because we have monthly VWAP here, right? Sellers are stepping in there. And then this is where I think the main focus should be, right? Last week, I tweeted about this as well. This is the previous week value. Now, it has been trading super clean, where we weren't able to accept above, reject it, closed back within value. Where do we go? Towards the opposite extreme. We then had like your typical, front run of that value area low. We swept the low, then we had a market structure break here. This is your long entry invalidation below the low, and we're targeting the opposite extreme again, right? So 2 really crispy trades purely based on weekly value. I see a lot of people getting extremely bullish right now on the timeline. Also look at this, right? We had that sweep. This is what I was referring to in the Discord, right, guys? For those of you who are in the Discord, that sweep here into that previous week VWAP, which is confluent with a 5-day composite, which we'll go over in a bit. So this was the traversion back towards the highs, really clean interaction there. But what until now, right? What can we expect going forward? In my opinion, like I understand that a lot of people are getting super bullish here, but I think this is the area where if you're long from the lows, this is where you can start taking at least partial profits, because this is going to be a tough nut to crack on this attempt, right? If we're taking a look at the H4 and we're removing VWAP real quick here, right? Look, this is the 30 and the 90-day cluster there. Like, bang, wasn't able to accept back above. Boom, big sell-off, right? Right now, we're trading back at this. So even if Bitcoin is going to be getting some sort of a compression into this level, I generally don't think this is going to be blasting through the highs at the first attempt, right? If we do, perfectly fine. We can start targeting higher prices. But until then, I'm thinking that we might be getting some sort of a range here, compress into the level if we're bullish and then expand, right? Or the bear scenario here would be sweep the highs right here into this gap and then a structural break to get short for a move towards these lows, right? And then, we will have like another layer of confluence, which is a 2-week value, which I'll go over right now as well. So, yeah, so far, let me just summarize everything here. Whoops. Let's get this back in. VWAP, like that. Let's go back towards the prep. So the yearly here, and let me just cover this and then I'll go over some questions. So the yearly is trying to accept above developing year value area high. We then have the quarterly. So the quarterly has acceptance back within previous quarter value. The monthly has acceptance back within previous month value. And then the weekly, trying to accept above previous week value area low, value high, my bad. Potential 2-week composite. All right. Now, let's quickly go over the chat real quick. What you prefer? Would you trade 1 hour OB or 50-minute OB inside that 1 hour? So one of the things that I tend to do is whenever I'm looking at, for example, a low, then we sweep that low, we form an order block there. We have like a displacement here. What I'll tend to do is I'll zoom in. If this setup is based on the 1 hour, I'll go towards the 5-minute time frame to really fine tune the fair value gap here. So what I'll do is if this is the structure where we form that initial low, then we do a bit of that, right? And then we form that sweep of the low. Whoops. Let me just draw it like this. So we form the sweep. We form this as an order block right there, right here. Then I'll wait for a market structure break there. And then I want to see like a fair value gap being formed here because, that's an indication to me that we're on the right side of the trade. Displacement is going higher. And then I'll zooming in on the 5-minute chart to get, to really hone into those entries. If you're looking at price action. I'm using Zoom It from Windows. That's why I'm able to, zoom in and have rectangles, arrows, and, whatever the fuck that I want to draw. So rolling VWAP, right? We're not done yet. Rolling VWAP. Also saw a question about how do you choose what VWAP levels that you use, because because I see you don't mark all of them. Well, that's because right here within this chart, I have already distilled everything for you guys that you need to know going into next week. I don't have to have all of my levels on the same chart, right? Because a lot of times, if we're taking a look at the, where's my weekly value? Right here. All right. if we're looking at the previous week value high, that previous week value high here is actually confluent with previous month VWAP, right? So in my opinion, I only need to choose one of them, right? So I'm not going to be plotting all of the lines within one chart, because at that point I'm like, what am I even trading? So I try to look for confluence, and then at that point I'm like, okay, you know what? Obviously the yearly is the most important one, then the quarterly, then the monthly, then the weekly. So I'll have a filtration on that as well. But yeah, you can't just slap any or all levels on one chart, because you'll lose track of what you actually need to be trading. So rolling VWAP. Let's go towards this chart. Let's get rid of the drawings and let's add the other VWAPs as well. So we've got the 7-day and the 30-day that I want to be aware of. So if I were to solely base a trade thesis on this chart with rolling VWAPs, I would argue that we are now reaching a key inflection point in the form of the 30-day and the 90-day rolling VWAP, which happened to be confluent with the previous quarterly VWAP. Whoops, that is also somewhere right here, right? So if there's going to be a bearish line in the sand, I expect it to be within the 114K region. Now, the 7-day rolling VWAP, this is a question that I receive a lot, is, why aren't you putting a lot of emphasis on the 7-day anymore, right? Because in my opinion, rolling VWAPs are super good for trading environments, right? For example, if we're zooming out a bit, like let's say the 12-day, or, let's just take a look at the yearly rolling VWAP, right? Which is the fat ass line down here. So during a trending move on the higher time frame, this is your contextual level, right? That's why I tweeted about this. You don't have to do dumb shit. If you want to trade spot, just set alert on the yearly rolling VWAP. We're crossing down. Once it does, you look for longs, and if it accepts below, we're done, right? You can just take a year off and you can come back. Let me just show you. For example, right here. This is where we accepted below. When was that? January 22, right? When did we broke back above? Right there. That was that. January 23. Holy shit, right? No need to overcomplicate things. This is when you get the fuck out of the markets. And if you get a pullback like that, that's when you short, the absolute shit out of the market for that rotation lower for the bear market. Then we get like the time capitulation, right? This is price capitulation. I cannot pronounce that shit. But once we get back above, that's when you get back into the market. Now, that's a hard time frame, right? Why am I choosing to not put a lot of emphasis on the 7-day? Because if the market goes from a trending towards a range-bound environment, you will notice that rolling VWAP aren't as good anymore, right? And at that point, you need to start to switch towards TPO, composites, previous week values, right? Static levels in order to, get into those quality trades. Now, the 7-day is the first one that needs to go, right? The 30 and the 90-day has enough length to them to still be viable, right? But let's say that we were here for 4 more months. At that point, I'm no longer looking at them, right? Because that's just chopping through it at that point. So 7-day, not looking at that. This definitely resistance until proven otherwise. So the 7-day, not using it. 30-day, confluent with 90-day, slightly above the current highs. And then we've got the 90-day that is confluent with previous quarter VWAP, slightly above current highs. All right. Is that clear so far? Rolling VWAPs, longer term VWAPs. We're building a bias here purely based on these dynamic values. Any questions? I'll give it a minute and then I'll move forward towards TPO. On my opinion, do I think that will go up or more downside? That is going to be entirely up to the 90-day rolling VWAP. I think if there is a genuine break above the 90-day, you do not want to fade that, right? Last time that we did it here, it's where you get aggressive and you want to get into those moves, right? I think if we can get acceptance above, I don't think that we should be getting a retest for longs, right? I think if we do accept above, we should be doing something like that, where we form like a shallow range here, then continuation higher, fill some of these inefficiencies on the left side of the chart. So When you're talking about previous value, do you mean previous yeah, exactly. I'm always referring to in this case, right? If we take a look at the bottom left, let me just zoom in. So this was the weekly developing value, weekly developing value high, weekly developing value low. Then we close the week off. We've got a new week. At that point, I'm like, okay, previous value low there, previous week VWAP. And you can see how clean we've been trading within that, right? I mean, doesn't get much cleaner than that, to be honest. Like these interactions, super crisp. Now, acceptance back within, not good, but we'll have new previous week value tomorrow, which is going to be like that. So at that point, I'm like, okay, you know what? If we do something like that, we might be just setting up for some compression here into that level, followed by a break higher. However, acceptance back within previous week value, it is no different than what we did here, right? Where we're just failing to hold above previous week value high. At that point, one of the laws of market dynamics come into play, and that is we're looking for that rotation lower towards the opposite end, right? Which is there. So reset chart view right here, like that. Going towards the review. All right, TPO. What do we have on TPO? Let's fire up extra charts. So on this chart, you'll see that I've got composites on the left side of the screen and I've got regular TPO profiles on the right side of the screen. I think the cleanest interaction here was, if I were to reset this TPO there, right? What we have here is we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days of overlapping value. Now let's merge them together. Start merge, and I want to have the stop merge, right? A 5-day composite. Now, taking this into consideration, let's take a look at this chart here. Let's zoom in, right? Let's get everything here. The things that I want to be aware of are, number one, we've got a single print here from this breakaway day right there, right? Where we had like that huge push lower right there. Single print. So we do have a reason to go up. This is an anomaly. What else do we have? Well, we've got a shit ton of longs right now opening up around the highs. Usually not a great case for Bitcoin to be bullish during the weekend, right? We might just get like a fill of the single prints, which brings me towards another point of interest, single prints below. We've got a poor low intraday, and then we have the other part where this is the 5-day composite. Let's expand all of the blocks right here, right? We can see that when the market accepts back within value right here, enough time and space, we try to break below the 5-day composite value low. We aren't able to do so, right? And when you see shit like this is when you're like, oh, okay, we're getting that reversion back into the older 5-day composite value high. Like it's a lot of chop in the middle of value, right? Which is to be expected, but we're trading around the edges of value. So when we get like a long trigger around the value low, we're going to be targeting the value high, okay? So far super clean. I don't really have a recent composite to work with, mainly because the market has just been chopping around like vertical accumulation, super annoying in my opinion. But what I'll be looking for is whenever we do form like a multiple day composite up here, like that would be better. Let's say that we get 2 days of compression into the 9-day rolling VWAP. I'll be looking for a break from value towards the upside or a break from value towards the downside, right? Until then, I'm going with what I currently have. Single print, poor low intraday, and we're rotational within the 5-day composite, okay? So let me just write that down and then go over the chat real quick, otherwise I forget it. So we have single prints above, confluent with previous quarter VWAP. Then we've got single prints below. Let's see, where are the single prints from down here? It's all the way up until 112,780. Where do we have? Let me go back to the chart. 112,780. Holy chart. 112,7. Oh, perfect. Okay. Single prints below, confluent with 2-week value area high. Poor lows intraday, and we are rotational within 5-day composite value area. All right. When you merge VWAP levels, is 1,000 between two levels too much, or is it okay to merge them? In this case, if I'm merging VWAP, right, Great question. So right here, we've got two overlapping values based on VWAP, right? We're trading. We've got previous week value from last week, and we've got the current weekly developing value. Let's see how that looks. And I've already did that right here. Bang, right? So let's take a look at the indicator. This is where we open up, right? That Monday. And we're going to be closing, like I cannot close on this Monday because I have to lock it to the current price. But this is essentially that 2-week value that I have on my other chart right here, this one. It is the value area high there and the value area low there. And we can see, right, we can get the confirmation that it is the proper value because of how this is trading around it, right? We saw the acceptance above VWAP, held it as support, slow grind higher, initial rejection right there, right? And now we're trading above. So if we're bullish, this is what we need to see. So yeah, great question. It's a good looking composite. I would use it. If we're taking a look at TPO, let's see, do I have the weekly profiles here? These are the monthly. This is the week, I guess. It is. So reset chart, reset all TPOs. Look, you know, do we have a 50% value overlap with the previous profile? Yes, we do. So heading into tomorrow, if you want to merge like a weekly profile, by all means, add them together, right? Merge, bang. 2-week composite. So at that point, this needs to hold. Acceptance back within. What can we expect? A rotation lower or towards point of control. But great question. So this is indeed a newer version. I have been working really close with the team at ExoCharts to bring a, in my opinion, like a really good TPO layout. Like honestly, I think you guys love this. We're still beta in the beta version where we're, you know, getting everything out, but it is, I mean, it's even better than Sierra Chart in my opinion at this point, where it's working really well. Like there's gonna be a shit ton of features with the Delta highlights, and there's gonna be a whole bunch of other stuff that's coming. So yeah, I mean, this is gonna be the next best thing in my opinion. So you'll love it. All right. So moving back here, right there, TPO, we done that. Summary. Let's summarize this. So on the quarterly and monthly time frame, Bitcoin is showing significant strength with the reclaims of quarterly and monthly value area low. It is also trying to accept above the recent 2-week value high, which is good to see. The only reason why we're not breaking higher yet is due to the 90-day rolling VWAP, confluent with previous quarter VWAP. A clean break above indicates a bullish shift, at which I expect 120k to be tagged. Conversely, a failed break leads to much more downside. All right. So narrative right here. Heading into next week, the 2 areas of interest, I cannot type today, of interest, are based on the previous quarter VWAP, confluent with the single prints for potential shorts, and the 2-week value high for potential longs. Oh my gosh, look at my typing. It's getting colder here, so my hands are cold. For potential longs. If Bitcoin is indeed setting up for a bullish quarter 4, I do not want to see acceptance back below 112.8k as that would indicate a failed break from value When and if that occurs, I'll target 110 and potentially 107k again. All right. So let's just not type a whole fucking bunch here, but let's just go to the charts. So the 4-hour chart here, I would argue that we've got a bunch of confluence here. Let me get everything here on the chart. So the reason 2-week composite is between this value area high and that value area low, right? We saw the deviation, reclaimed it, right? Boom. Value area high, couldn't break above, boom. Back towards value area low. Awkward grind in the middle of the distribution, right? This distribution, which is why we're getting such a shit ton of chop here, right? Not the cleanest to trade, to be honest. Now that we're trying to break back above, I'm inclined to think that as long as the 2-week value area high holds the support, we'll probably see more upside. So let me just get rid of the crosshair here. I think Bitcoin wants to at least clean up these equal highs, potentially into this gap here, right there, right? And for that to occur, I need to see the 2-week value area high hold support. So if we do something like that, sweep a low, then have a structural break, we can continue the compression here at the 90-day and the 30-day, at which I think we'll eventually see a big candle higher into this high, at which it's going to be important too. Shallow consolidation. Do not retest the previous quarterly VWAP, right? I don't want to see, like, if this indeed is bullish, there's not going to be any cheap entries anymore, right? We should just go shallow consolidation, immediate continuation higher, right? This is the bullish case in my opinion. And for that, I want to position for longs around the 2-week value area high or on a high volume bar break above the previous quarterly VWAP to go with that break from value, okay? Conversely, if we go towards the hourly chart and let's just stick on the H4 just for the bigger picture here. If we do in fact sweep this high and then we reject, right, break below this low, I think that's bearish. And then I'll be potentially looking for shorts here, right? Confirmation is then on a close below this low. So let's say that we do this, right? We form this low and then on the H4 we spike it. We close below right here, right? At that point right here, I think if you do a consolidation there, try to break back above and cannot do it, that's bearish. And I'm going to be targeting previous month value low first, but eventually I think we're going to be retesting the 2-week value area. Well, why is this value area high? The 2-week value area low again, okay? So those are the two main trades for me going into next week. I have a alert set at the 90-day rolling VWAP, spike it, close back like that. This is bearish, right? For a higher time frame swing towards the value area low. However you want to get on board with this trade on the lower time frames is up to you. But I think a clean break back within the 2-week is bearish. And we're going to be running it back towards the 2-week value area low. A clean smash above previous quarterly VWAP, the single prints, the 90 and the 30 rolling VWAP, and we're going to be breaking this higher. Let's see where's the previous quarterly value high. Right here. Let's add that on the chart as well. Whoops, not there. Right here. All right. And this is the previous quarter value high. Coordinates 118.490. Right. So at that point, we're going to go at least towards here, right? Which lines up with the gap fill here. All right. Is everybody on par with this? So are we clear? In terms of there's one more thing that we need to, the high was we've just covered. The bullish line in the sand here right now is going to be for me, the 2-week value area high. Bullish 2-week value area high. And then the bearish line in the sand for me is going to be the previous quarterly VWAP. Right here. Previous quarter VWAP. All right. After bus, you take entry on fair value gaps, right? So did you wait for the reaction or just... Okay, let me just go over that. For example, right here, right? This here is the 2-week value area low. right? It was the previous week. It was, let me just see. Yeah, the previous week value low there, right? It's this white. Oh, let me just show you on this chart. So on this chart, what I tend to do is on the hourly time frame, we sweep a low right there, right? At a key contextual level. So first things first, number one, we need to base our trade off a certain level. In this case, it's going to be based around a weekly value area low, right? Because it's the previous week value low here. And we can see that it has been trading really clean with a previous interaction. So I want to be able to look at trades there. Once we form an initial low, we've got two types of traders. Number one is going to be people that long this low and have their stops resting below this low. Number two, breakout traders, right? If they see a trade below this low, they will pile into shorts and they think, okay, we can capture that break from value. When we see an increase in participation after sweeping a low, right? In this case, you can just wait for an hourly close. We sweep this low and we close as a string failure panel right there, right? When this closes, let's do the replay. So when this closed, replay, bang, right there. I'm immediately thinking, okay, this is the sweep. Let me just draw it out. This is the sweep right there. What was the level prior to the sweep with an opposing candle? That's this right here, right? An up close candle prior to a sweep of the lows. Now let's go after we sweep this low and we have an hourly close. Let's go to the 5-minute chart right there. I'm like, okay, you know what? Can we fine tune that hourly pivot? Yes, we can. Because this cluster right here from this bar, this is when that sweep occurred, right? All of these. You could argue this one, right? But I tend to, look a bit more at rhythm. So in my opinion, this is that high. Then it's just a waiting game, right? Where we're like, okay, I need to see a candle close above on the 5-minute. Candle close on the 5-minute. I'm like, all right, get along in there. My invalidation is not going to get cute. Not there, just below the low. And what am I targeting? I'm looking at VWAP and I'm looking at the opposite extreme, right? So that's how you can pair it off. And then we can look at that. And we all know how that goes, right? 10x. Don't really have to show everything, but you guys know the drill at that point. Does that make sense? Reset chart view. See? Bang. The first TP is at VWAP, right? And that's where we're getting the reaction from. So right here, I'm using a 65 tick size. Right here, 65 tick size as well. What about a fill breakdown below 2-week value high? Yeah, that's. Oh, you're referring to if we like have a filled break below after retesting it, or can you summary my bias? I just put it within the Notion, so you should be able to see that. All right. Any other questions? So what you're referring to is, let's go back to this chart. What you're referring to is if we do this and then reclaim it, like that's a long. So if we try to break below and then reclaim this, that's bullish. But if we accept back within the 2-week, like that's bearish. Yeah, it's because they're using a different calculation on the exchange tick. That is with because I think that tick size shouldn't be a number within the thousands. Doesn't make sense, right? I think tick size should be like Sierra chart within the 60s or 80s or whatever. And it's like if you go towards chart settings, data source, you'll have the original tick size right here, right? Power of 10. It depends on what Extra Charts has a setting where you can adjust it, right? The underlying tick size. That is why, otherwise you'll end up using a 600 tick size or 2000 tick size on altcoins, right? I don't really think that that's it's good for your charts. We got poor lows on today's TPO. Yeah, we do. And that is why I said, we're aware of that poor low here. We can see that, right? The green dashed line. However, am I be putting my entire thesis on a poor low structure? No. But I am aware that if we do get acceptance within, I think the 2-week value is up here, right? So if we accept back within the 2-week value, your mind should immediately be, okay, what am I targeting, right? Where are the anomalies? So let's just sum up the anomalies here. Single print, poor low, naked value area low, naked value area low, right? So all of these are drawn liquidity, because what we're seeing with TPO is, market efficiency, where naked value area high, the market comes back up and rebalance it, right? Poor high, market comes back up and rebalance it. So these structures right there, like, it's not that if we have a genuine break above a quarterly value that we should be, no, we need to short this all the way up here because naked value area low, right? No, that's not how it works. But if we get a bearish shift in condition, then our mind should be, okay, you know what? I'll be looking at these inefficiencies there, and I'll try to pair it off with previous week value low, previous month VWAP, and so on. Do we have confluence, right? Do we have a reason to go lower, which are these inefficiencies? And we want to pair it off with a contextual level in the form of VWAP. All right, let me just get right here. Is that clear on how we're reacting to the poor lows? Exactly. Well, if you see that there's a large amount of positive delta on one side of the print, but there's no net longs opening up, what could this be? If a short needs to close his order, what does he do? He buys it back at market, right? So if you're seeing like a large increase in buy delta here, and we see a sharp drop in net longs, for example, a drop in open interest, right? Then that's not new longs opening at market. It's a short closing, because they need to buy back their position, right? Good question, though. We can see we've been digging around for a bit here, to be honest, around that value area high, right there, right? Right. Just shifting next month web to desktop, Excel charts. Any tips? Yeah, I mean, I would highly advise to do that, because I'll be moving my entire stuff to Excel charts once this version is also available for the public. It's gonna be so. I mean, it's been a while since I've legit was super happy about some developments within some of these things. And if I'm switching from Sierra chart towards Excel charts because of the TPO, like, that's a big thing. I've been upon Sierra charts since I've been trading there for 6 years now, I think, on Sierra charts. So, and I've always used that for my TPO, but right now with this current implementation of their TPO, I'm all good. Can you check the 365-day rolling view up for Bitcoin dominance? I can do that for you. 365-day VWAP for Bitcoin dominance. Bitcoin dominance. I need to disable this. And then let's take a look at the yearly, daily, reset chart view. Right there. What was the last time that we broke below? When's this? March 20. February 21. Was that good? February 2021. Oh yeah, that's good. But this is also good to see, right? The entire market had a reset back into the yearly rolling VWAP. That's good. ETH BTC. This is not looking good. We'll need to see like a reclaim ASAP. Yeah, it is. It's the 30-minute candle visualized on the right side of the chart. Yeah, because within this example, I'm looking at a range 100 chart, right, for the lower time frames. But I also want to know where the positioning within the 30-minute rotation is. So let's say that, otherwise you might get lost in the sauce, if you know what I mean, right? I need to know, oh, wait, this 30-minute rotation, like there's a large amount of buying interest here, right? Or if there's a bearish development where you see like volume shifting towards the highs and it lines up with the trap like that. Like I think, it's good to have like a visual representation of the 30-minute bar there, or 50-minute, or whatever you want. All right. If that's it, I'll be wrapping it up, man. I appreciate everybody for attending the stream. Let me just quickly go back towards the prep, right? For those of you who want to copy the prep, this is the prep for this week. I'll do my best to upload another video midweek to see if we get any updates rolling. Stay tuned for some awesome developments, and I will see you guys next week, all right? Have a good one. Take care.